It's actually worse quality
than 4K, right? That's
Yeah.
what I was told.
and it's smaller. It's smaller memory. Like you would think it would be faster. But maybe whatever's happening on. Okay, and then let me do one more.
Yeah, you want to sound check yourself.
Yeah. This phone just needs to go like over there.
Why will that cause noise or
It does. It does radio interference. It kind of just buzzes. It sounds like the old AOL days when you're kind of starting up on that. Okay, and then if you can you just do me a favor, get real close to your mic one time?
Real close, yes.
All right, yeah.
Getting the Love Line with Dr. Drew. I used to love that show. That show was like, I mean, not that my podcast is like Loveline, but it started like what I'm trying to do started with stuff like that. People calling in, getting vulnerable, talking about their stuff, with a not that I'm not Dr. Drew, but it's just like that sort of intimate connection, even though you're not sitting with somebody.
Are you saying that you have guests call in on your show?
I'm going to get there.
Okay.
I'm going to get there. No, but like that idea, I remember listening to Loveline and being like, man, I can't believe this person's talking about what they're talking about. This is crazy. Like, for someone to admit that where people can hear them talking about it on the radio, it was like fascinating to me.
To being so open about what's going on in their
life. Yeah, like
I
got herpes from this person and I don't know how to tell, I cheated on my boyfriend and I got herpes and now I'm afraid to sleep with my boyfriend because then he'll find out. And it's like, wow, people are talking about that openly,
Yeah, I think after this, probably on the technical side, everything should be good.
Oh, you want it to look, you don't want to see the separation of those two things?
Oh, the wire just kind of, that's kind of, what the hell? My bad.
You're a perfectionist, man. Yeah. I'm more of a,
all right. Yeah.
I like the madness.
I think we'll just let it rock from here. I think everything should be good as far as the sound goes. And the good thing is we have yours and mine right now. So once we do stop and shut yours off, we'll double check to make sure everything's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we kind of did like several pretend get ready goes, but you wanna try to kick this thing off?
Do you do the clap?
Oh yeah. Let's do one clap.
All right. Yeah. I don't have to do that on mine, which I like. But yeah. So it's been hard. It's been hard trying to have conversations with you leading up to this because a few times you've been like, we'll talk about that later. And it's like, but I want to know now. But we wanted to talk about stuff here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's difficult. Well, it's strange to like be on the phone having a conversation because when's the last time we talked?
Before this?
Yeah. Because I remember, my memory tells me an instance, and I'm wondering if your memory is the same. When do you think the last time we talked in person was?
Before we planned this, I want to say, was it the time that we met around North Waltham?
At like a Shaw's is the last time you were buying flowers for your girlfriend at the time. Is the last time I remember in person seeing you. It was the same girl who, when I went and visited you at college, when I had a black eye, do you remember? I went and visited you at college at UMass.
Yep.
And Jameson went out as well. I don't know if he was going there, but he was out there partying with us too. I had a black eye because I had gotten knocked out at a party at BC, and you were like stopping to get flowers for your girlfriend at the time, and that girl was the same girl who you had been dating when you were in college. Dude, when I went and visited you in college, she was like hanging out with this dude that was like smoking meth off light bulbs, and you were like having a really difficult. Do you remember this dude?
Yeah. So she was like, let's say floor 20. He was on floor 6, and he kept on calling her.
Yes.
And we were there.
Yes.
And then I was like, hey.
And you're like, we might have to go handle this. I'm like, God damn it. Is that what I just came here to do? Like I thought I just came here to get hammered, dude.
So then I think at this point we texted him like, hey, we'll be right there. We show up at his dorm room.
Nightmare.
Check, he's got a black eye. Jameson's behind me, just looking like 3 shit kickers.
Yeah.
And I just said, hey man, this is my girlfriend. You need to kind of stop doing this. Like, it's too much.
Yeah,
and
it went fine. It went fine. But that girl, I don't remember her name. I'm not sure if it's important.
Are you sure that that's who I was buying flowers for? I can't remember who that was. I remember us. I think you had your Toyota or Honda.
Honda Accord. Yeah, I lived in that. Yes. I
Yeah,
lived in that for 8 months. Dude. It's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
That, and so
That's the last time I remember seeing you in real life.
I think so. I think I do agree. I think that's probably the last time we saw each other. I don't know if we've had any phone calls since then. I know we've had a few text exchange
Yeah.
here and there.
And Instagram, we talked.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw you randomly go live. And I was like, what the hell's Steve Moy doing going live? And I went in there and there was thousands of people in there. And I was like, what? Why do all these people know who my buddy Steve is from childhood? And then I didn't, the whole, I don't watch a lot of reality TV. But then it come to find out you had done a show where you like married a lady.
Married a stranger, yeah.
Yeah. And I want to, so if this is my portion, if I'm allowed to, I wanted to, I don't know if we should get into that yet.
Okay, so you know what? Here's what we do. That'll be our starting point for next. Let's just I tell you what, I'm just gonna ask you who you are so you can just kind of give a general summary of explaining yourself, maybe a little bit about your whatever you want about your situation that you are comfortable sharing, and then how we know each other, and then I'll do the same.
Okay. So my name's Jack Doherty, and I am from Waltham, Massachusetts, and that's how I know Steve. I mean, I'm just a guy. I grew up with a lot of friends. It was probably our childhoods were probably similar, where we're generally average-looking men.
Except for this guy,
yeah. in a community where that was I played sports and I hung out with like the cool kids and hung out with pretty girls, so it was easy to make friends. And I didn't meet you till later on. But yeah, I dealt with some stuff early on.
I'd say high school, right?
Yeah, because you were older.
Yep.
And because I got kept back, so I ended up graduating with your sister.
Gotcha.
When I was supposed to graduate with Timmy and Donnie and Jake and all those guys.
Yep.
And Kevin. Kevin's so funny. Kevin Durant. And so I went through some traumatic stuff early on in my childhood years up to like teenage years, and then it's a really short, easy story. I found drugs. They helped me self-medicate, so I didn't know how to deal with what had happened. I found drugs, which helped me ignore that stuff, and it didn't. Then that turmoil didn't get in the way of my everyday life, and as long as I was high, I was happy. But then eventually I had to then deal with getting off the drugs and then all that stuff that I had been hiding from. And recently, I just took 7 years clean. I started this podcast on YouTube, and but I don't know. It's kind of it's weird being interviewed usually, because the only interview I did was on Soft White Underbelly, and it was specifically about like my trauma and drug use and stuff. And I don't feel like that's what this is. It's more about, I feel like how we know each other is like, me going up to North Waltham and like visiting you, and we were involved in many ways. Like we sold weed together for a while, and like, you know what I mean? You were making music and I watched you do that, and we would go to, the parties at Russell Street and have a good time. And we had two very different groups of friends, but they overlapped. I feel like you were better at keeping friends from all groups. I kind of would pigeonhole myself, like I was either hanging out with my sports buddies, or I was hanging out with the kids that I played computer games with, or I was hanging out with the kids that I was smoking weed with and doing pills with. I never really, you were much better at like gathering everyone together and coming and like bringing everybody in for the same cause. Like whether it was like, yeah, I know you for this reason, you for this reason, but all you guys, I just came out with this song, come check it out. And so you'd bring everyone together. Or my family's gone, I'm going to have all my different groups of friends come to my house. And you know what I mean? I wasn't really as good as you were at doing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You more so compartmentalized your friends and went here and there as opposed to,
I'd put on different masks for different groups, but I think you were better at like, hey, I'm just Steve. And like, you know what I mean? Like I remember envying that about you. Like, or these days I know who I am and I'm comfortable with who I am, and like I'm okay with telling people what I like and don't like. But as a kid, I wanted to fit in, and I like wanted somehow, I thought I wanted everybody to like me even though I didn't like everybody. And at an early age, I feel like the emotional intelligence that you had as a young person, I looked up to, because I wasn't confident in being like a girl being like, "Oh, you like that music?" I'd be like, "No," but like it was my favorite band. You were more like, "Yeah, I don't like that," and like that's okay. And you can either be cool with that and we can hang out, or you don't have to be cool with that and you can walk away. I didn't have that confidence as a young person like you did. I don't know, for whatever reason, I think you matured quicker than most of the guys around our age. Or maybe I just thought that because I looked up to you, but I remember I liked hanging around you because it just made me feel like um, more mature and like smarter because you went to college, but also like cool because you were into a lot of cool shit like making music, and you had a lot going on. And so I like always wanted to be around you, although I didn't. It's not like you never slept over at my house. It wasn't like we grew up in grade school together. But once I found out who you were and that you were willing to hang out with me, I was like, oh shit, I should hang out with this dude, because I feel like I felt like you leveled me up, and I didn't have many people. I always hung out with people on the same level or lower, because it like boosted my ego or something. But like with you, it was like, oh, I wanna. It's like if you hang around with rich people long enough, you'll figure out a way to get rich. So they say, you hang around a barbershop long enough, you get a haircut. Show me your five closest friends, and that's basically who you are. So I wanted to be around you more.
Yeah, I think the way I describe it typically, or the way I frame it, is that when it comes to maturity, there are vast amounts of ways for people to mature. Like people kind of generalize it and think, oh, you just need to act like a grown up or whatever. But it's like, it's physical maturity, right? Are you building, like, is your body growing into itself? There's emotional maturity, like, can you handle, when someone says something mean, or if your partner's upset, all these things. There's also social maturity, and I think for me, I had, a ton of older brothers with a lot of different influences all around me at a pretty young age. They were coming to my house and hanging out and partying. So I'd be at a middle school dance and I'd come home to a high school party. So that was kind of my environment. And I think that's some of what you're saying is reflecting on me in that way, where I've soaked up a lot of different things from a lot of different influences. And I am somebody who's pretty, excited or passionate about sharing those things, or seeing something in somebody and seeing, hey, let me see how far, like seeing a spark of something, whether it's an interest or a passion, and saying, hey, like, how can we nurture that? How can that be furthered to kind of act as a guiding light? If that's what you're interested in, here's what I know about that, and here's what I would hopefully suggest that on your path it would further you in that way. And I think that's what I hear when I hear you talk about that.
I also remember as a young person, a lot of. I just remember you not knocking people down. I distinctly remember that. Like other kids would be like, "Oh, do you see what he did?" And like, "Yeah, he's a piece of shit," or whatever. Like, just you were never like that in my experience. It was like, maybe somebody that wasn't liked by everybody be like, "Hey, that person?" You'd be like, "Yeah, he's actually a cool guy. I've done this with him," or like, "I know him from this, and I like that kid." Or if you didn't, you wouldn't. You never took the road to like knock someone down to bring yourself up, and I admired that because that was abnormal as a teenager. You know what I mean? Teenagers just that's not the way teenagers work, and I remember envying that, and or I wanted to behave that way, and in my mind I was like, well, I gotta hang out with him to find out how he does it. Like if you make a really good lasagna, the only way I'm going to learn how you do it is to like watch you do it and try and help. So I was like, I just want to be around this dude. And
Or a nitro.
yeah, yeah, I'd make it stronger, but it's a good
I know,
step.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that as young people.
Yeah, no, and I think, and I think I remember maybe being younger and having some of those tendencies, but I do remember kind of making a conscious effort, especially, middle of the high school, where it was just like, hey, we're all struggling here in different ways. And I feel, to this day, it's important that I do my best. That if somebody's giving me positive to neutral energy, that that you know I'll either meet them in a plus. You know,
Yeah.
if somebody's actively trying to do something to hurt me or bring me down, I'll handle it in the best I can, and I'm not perfect. But my general goal is, hey, let's try to have an interaction that is a minimal neutral, but at best positive in some way.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can contribute? Is there anything I can learn from you? That sort of thing. So that's like, I guess it's sort of like a philosophy or something,
Yeah.
like how I think about each interaction.
One thing I haven't been able to do with the people that I've interviewed is ask them what they thought about me as a young person. So like all my interviews have been with people that only know me since I got clean and only know me from California on. So I've never had the luxury of being able to ask somebody like, what did you think of me when I was a kid? Whether you say, man, you're a prick, or like, you know what I mean? Like nobody liked you or whatever it might be. I've never, the longest anybody that I've interviewed has known me is like 5 years or so. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
just, it's nice to have somebody to be like, what was I like? Well, like, what do you remember about me as a young person?
Well, I feel like it's interesting. Some of the things that you were describing, I feel like you've always had a certain charm and positivity about you as well. Like in my mind, that's how I think about you. Like I think people have always been drawn to you. Um, it, I mean, one of our earlier interactions, when I was making that album, you were so supportive. Like I think you bought like 5 albums, and I was like, dude, like I had only sold a couple albums at that point in time. I'm like, oh, okay, you are somebody who is excited about what I'm into. Is very friendly. We were at like high school parties around that time, and I this whatever you're describing, maybe it was internal. I didn't see it. I saw just a positive kid who just was smiling, kind of happy-go-lucky, and seemed to also contribute in that same way. So I always viewed you as just a cool kid who was good at sports, and in general, I didn't see any. Again, I wasn't in middle school or elementary school with you or anything like that. But yeah, I didn't. I mean, do you think that the way that you had been describing, like, oh, I want to learn how to, I want to, not knocking people down, not this and that sort of thing. I mean, maybe you already had some of that in you.
I had the desires to do those things. Like I didn't go out of my way to like I didn't bully kids. I didn't pick on kids. Outwardly, I think I was very kind. But watching you, I didn't see the internal struggle in your head because I'd see someone do something and I would think like, what an idiot. Why are they doing that? Why is that? Why is my buddy saying that to that girl? That's not going to work. Like in my mind, I felt those things. I wouldn't portray them, but it just seemed like you had an easier flow of just being like a good friend and like being kind to females. Like it was never, there's a lot of guys that if a girl has too much to drink, their intentions you can see. And like it wasn't you were never like that. You were kind of like me where like, hey, do you need a ride home? Like genuinely, do you just need to get home safe? Like I have no ulterior motive. You know what I mean? But like and I just it's just something that I looked up to. But no, I wasn't, I didn't pick on people. I wasn't intentionally a jerk. It just I don't know. You were older than me. I just remember seeing you in Mark's basement at parties and like the Russell Street, like I mentioned, and I mean all over the place. It was just I don't know. You were just a good. You were just. I felt like you were a good role model as far as having great male friends, showing respect to women, um, throwing good parties, and doing what you loved, like making music. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't common for like you or Keith to like make rap albums. Wasn't like a common thing for like
At that age. Yeah.
no, it wasn't. Eminem had like happened a few years before. Not a few years, but when I was in middle school, Eminem came out. But it was just like I don't know. I was just, and I remember buying a few of your CDs because I wanted to have one in my car. I wanted to have one at my house, and in case I like met somebody else, I could be like, hey, you should listen to this. You know what I mean? And give them
Yeah.
one. So it was just like a marketing for my friend. I don't know.
Yeah. And you got to remember at that time, again, that project took so long to make, but getting it out into the world, just like anything, just like we're doing now, you kind of need a positive feedback to some degree to feel driven to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so, I'll always remember that, and I'll always appreciate that. And, anytime anybody contributes in that sort of way, whether it's a simple like on social media to, purchasing my book or whatever it may be, those things to me, because I know how much goes into them,
Yeah.
and a lot of times people don't see that. And then also just the amount of effort, and then for it to be reflected in back in some way, whether, I mean, I think that album was, I think we had a couple good songs on it. I don't think it was a masterpiece by any means, but
you were a kid.
Yeah.
Just to come out with one is, I remember a lot. Yeah, I remember a lot of the songs. It was great.
Yeah, and in my creative workflow, me and Machard, funny surprising, he actually called me today. I haven't talked to him in a while.
That's crazy.
But we would make the music from scratch,
Yeah.
like we would sit in the basement, make the music, write the lyrics, record the songs. The other guys would also record the songs as well. Kev, Ryan, Little MC, Alex. So everything was pure, creation. And that was something I always, I feel, I think to some degree, I think influences, there'll always be influences. But for some reason, I didn't want to sample during that. I wanted to create something from the ground up. And I think there is something to that. Everyone has their different creative flow. But that was important to me because it made it feel more unique and original, and not like I didn't take anything from somebody. I made something from nothing. And
that's what I'm doing with my podcast. That's why I like it's just organic, and maybe not, obviously not top notch, but like it's the best that I have now. And as I learn, it'll get better, and you're going to teach me some stuff. But some people, when I told that I wanted to do it, they were like, okay, slow down, because it needs to look this way. Check out this person's podcast. This is what they're doing and this works. You want to emulate that. And I was like, yeah, I mean, why would I want to do what someone, if I'm doing a lesser version of what someone else is doing, everyone's just going to watch what the other person's doing. You know what I mean? Like, why would I want to be like that person's little brother? I would just want to, I don't want to be like some dollar store version of a Nike shoe called like, Spiky. I want to have like my own thing. You know what I mean? Even if it's bad at first, like there will be people out there that it resonates with. And it's to me, it's working great. I think it's amazing. And the emails that I get of people telling me things that they've never told anyone in their life. It's like,
yeah. And I think you're onto something in several ways. I think so many times, I'm guilty of it. I think everyone's guilty of it. I luckily to some degree overcome it, but in order to have a goal and accomplish it, like you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. And with the way that you're doing it, it makes it so much, like, I'm not saying at all that it's easy, but to just say, hey, I'm going to do not only what I know, what it's in my wheelhouse, but I'm also going to put it out as is, and just see what happens. I think there's so many steps along the way that you could run into that would limit you. Oh, it has to sound like this. Oh, it has to look like this. Oh, it's not good enough. So I'm going to scrap it and do it again. But to just like, and then the instant feedback that you're getting, you know what I mean? I really feel like you're onto something. Now the rest of it, like, you can have goals. You can say, oh, eventually I want to improve things. However it comes, maybe you don't. Maybe you just like it the way it is. But like that stuff can come in time. And I think it's really important to just kind of meet yourself where you are, create in that lane, and then build in a natural progression.
Yeah. I think people will like to see that as well.
Yeah.
Like the people who came in ground floor, they would like to, I think that's an exciting thing to watch. Like if you have a little brother who doesn't know how to throw a baseball and you're there, eventually when you see him throwing a baseball well, it's like, yes, I was along for that whole ride. It was cool to watch him try and fail and have these small successes and take his first steps. But now, like, look at this. This is cool,
Yeah.
I think there's some people that are along for the ride, and I didn't want to get hemmed up on the things like I want to make sure I have all these nice things, and I haven't worked for 2 months, so it's like this is the best I can do right now. With if it becomes a thing where I can where some sort of financial gain happens, where I can get a camera like you have, or like microphones like this, or editing software, like I bought these $45 mics, and that was like that was what I had. I think I had like 60 or $80. I was like, I have to get mics so I can interview people. So I went and spent every dollar I had. It's not like they're not nothing crazy, but they work. You know what I mean? And it was like, if I put in what little I have, if it's everything that I have, it's everything I have. If I had $1 million, my podcast would look different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and for me, I've always been fascinated with like the like I don't want to say like the highest quality, like quality is something that just whatever. Like I couldn't put out music unless it was a certain. It wasn't even as good as I would have liked it to have been. But for me, I've always been fascinated with getting like a really sharp image or a really quality sound. So for me, that's my passion. That's like podcasting itself isn't something that like I'm like I never had intention of going all in on it. For me, it was like, can I do that? Can I find a way to make it look like this and feel like this or whatever? So that was my goal, and that's why to some degree I did put the cart before the horse, where I'm like, you know what, I want to make sure, like I have a bunch of episodes that I haven't put out yet, and there are some that I won't, just because it was me. That was the learning process, and I love the learning process. I
Yeah,
love just like, okay, well, let me just watch YouTube videos, read articles, and figure out how they do it. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so that's my process, and that goes for anything: podcasting, music making, making apps, making computer software, and all that. Like I don't know. I could spend my day learning
yeah,
all the time.
yeah. No, I love learning too, but I think our two paths. I don't want to say that they overlap. I mean, we overlap in our lives, but like you focusing on quality, and you're a perfectionist, whether you like to admit it or not. I mean, you are, and that's okay. It's a
Yep.
great thing to strive for, because then even if you miss, you're still at the top tier. You know what I mean? But I'm more like, I wanted to do it. I didn't care about what it looked like or what it sounded like. Like my first ones were with my AirPods and my phone. I was focused on reaching somebody, anybody. Like my first episode, I was like, "Hey, everybody," and then in my mind, I was like, "Wait, we mean everybody?" So then I was like, "Or anybody," like maybe one person will see this, but my intent was, I'm just gonna put some stuff out there, and that I find is important, and that I find matters, because I can't be the only one that thinks these things matter. So someone else will see this at some point, and that's what I was trying to do. I was just trying to connect with people. I didn't care what it looked like or sounded like. I'm not a public speaker. I didn't go to college. I'm not the most educated guy. My vocabulary isn't as extensive as a lot of people's, but I just felt if I conveyed feelings honestly, that it would land with someone. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
figured whoever that person was, or those people are my people. I could, you know, I could try to do something else and like fake it, or like make it look plasticky, and like fit into the Facebook and Instagram world, where it like looks good, it's flashy, and it's like clickbaity, so people, oh, look at how many people clicked on my stuff. But it was like, I just want the quality of me, my authenticity, and the quality of what I'm actually talking about, feelings, inadequacies, insecurities. I just feel like it's valuable in here. Ooh, I'm smashing on my mic. In here, it's valuable, not like valuable, but like valuable.
Yeah. And one thing that comes to mind, I think as I was mentally preparing, running through some ideas and whatnot, um, how can I put this? So one thing I notice about people who have gone through a process like you have, which is a rehabilitation process, there is a typically, at least for the people who find a way to maintain it, something in them changes, obviously. But what I'm saying is something in them changes in the way that they're almost forced to confront themselves. And I feel like through that process, you end up becoming not only more willing to share, more willing to be, vulnerable, because it's sort of like your back is against the wall, and we can either go back down that road, or we should confront this. And you probably, you end up building a community that of like-minded people who are trying to do that, who are trying to face these demons or face these internal struggles and become vocal about it, come up with the language for it and also an expression for it so that it has an outlet. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you're doing now, because not everybody can sit in front of a camera and express themselves,
It's weird.
you know?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have someone there being like, "Yeah, me too," or you're onto something. It's like, I hope people even have any idea what I'm talking about. You know,
Yeah.
not every guy, not every guy probably. It's like, I'm sure not every guy. So I'm just going to give you an example of something that I'm willing to talk about, but I don't know if all men feel this way. But like, so if I know that my girlfriend wants to be intimate, right? And I think it's going to be sex, mentally, I'm trying to prepare myself like, all right, man, you need to make sure this lasts a certain amount of time so that it's adequate, and like, but like, and you need to make sure that you take care of them. And so all these things are running through my head. And then all of a sudden it's time for intimacy to happen. And oh my God, it's actually not going to be sex. It's going to be oral sex. So now in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't want her to get tired and like work really hard at it. So now I'm trying to fix my mind, like think about all these things that can actually make me finish faster so that she doesn't have to like put all this work in. And like I think about all that stuff all the time because I'm like trying to know, I like want to be best set up for whatever situation I get in. And like I don't know if all guys do that. Like I feel like most people are just like, well, if sex happens, cool. If a oral sex happens, cool. If nothing happens, cool. I like overanalyze these things, and because I want to come as like the best and easiest version of myself to accept. I don't know. Like, do you think about shit like that?
So to a degree, I think what you're describing is like, and I'm sure you've had conversations about this. Like it sounds like a people pleasing mentality,
For sure.
where okay, how can I make the best experience for someone else? Go out of my way to make sure they're comfortable, to make sure like they're satisfied, whatever. I think there's somewhere in the middle because there's some people who don't care about any of that stuff, and that's a detriment to the people around them. But when you take it to the extreme, then it can have the best of intention, but it can have these side effects that you might not always realize. Of course, it's not. I wouldn't view it as a negative thing to be conscientious and be aware of other people's time and other people's effort. I think that's a great and like a noble pursuit. The only thing is when you take it too far, you'll end up. I mean, how about this? Have you found it? Have you come across ways that tendency has gotten in the way of relationships or
No, I brought it up to my girlfriend. I was like, hey, I just want to let you know like what I was just thinking about, and I like told her about it, and she was like, must be hard being a dude. I was like, well, you don't think this way? She's like, no, none of that ever crosses my mind. But luckily, I'm just open to be like, this is what was just running through my mind. And I think her initial reaction was like, I love you so much that you're willing to share that with me. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I should have shared it, but it's on the table now. You know what I mean?
right? So okay, here's how I end up viewing it. That that if I'm in a friendship or a relationship with somebody who is going out of their way beyond what I think is necessary, then there's either two things happening. There's either like an accrual, like in their body or essence, that either they're ignoring or they're feeling that is like that can end up leading towards resentment because if you're willing to do all these things and then you see that your partner isn't or your friend isn't, then it's like, why am I putting this effort? Why am I being the one? Why am I wasting my time?
Keeping score.
Yeah, and it has to add up eventually if you take it too far, and then it either comes up in two ways. Either you just say, you know what, I don't want to be friends with this person anymore, or you bring it up to them and just say like, hey, I didn't know you felt that way. Like
Yeah.
this, why did like
That's best case scenario. Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know you felt that way. Let's talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's best case scenario. And that's typically how, but no, like those thoughts that I was talking about, they never like got in the way. It wasn't like I thought about it so much that like then intimacy didn't happen or anything like that. I'm willing to talk, it's just one of the things that I'm willing to talk about it, and then it's like I can laugh at myself.
So all right, so let me put it this way. You would want to do everything you can so that she enjoys, let's just say, this sexual
Yeah,
experience or this date or whatever it may be, but also you deserve that too, you know? Like maybe you don't need to rush and just get it over with so that they're more comfortable. Maybe you just take a minute and say, hey, you know what, this is a really good moment. And just as I wanted to give to them, and they are willing to give to me, like maybe maybe don't take it too far and take for 2 hours.
yeah, yeah,
But like don't forget about yourself as well, and this person may be more than happy to satisfy you in whatever way,
yeah, yeah. No, and generally on the whole, I'm very good with doing that, and my thoughts typically don't affect my behaviors, because I address them, like what you were talking about. Through my growing process, having my back against the wall and having to look at certain things. It's just kind of part of my routine now, is looking at things, mostly myself. I have a much easier time admitting my flaws and saying, hey, I fell short. It's a lot easier for me to do that than for me to be like, hey, you did this and it hurt my feelings. That's still a little icky feeling to me, because I'm okay admitting my flaws, because I know what I'm capable of handling. Like I know that embarrassment and like shame and those things, I know how, like, I can deal with those things, and I'm not going to lose my mind or go get high, or most of the time cry. I have a my tolerance for emotional pain is pretty large, and if I don't know what yours is, I don't want to test it. If I don't know, if we haven't had a conversation before where I was honest about, hey, Steve, you said this to me, so I set an expectation that was going to happen because I took you at your word. But then when it came down to it, this is actually what happened, and that's not what we agreed with. And so I feel like we need to have a conversation about that, because I'm starting to have some resentment about that. If we've done that in the past and it's worked, I'm okay doing it. But if I haven't done that with you, I'd rather, I know that I can handle the discomfort, and like I can work on stuff on my own time and write down my resentments and talk to my sponsor about it. If I don't know if you can handle it, sometimes I have, not you specifically, my whoever I'm dealing with. If I don't know, I just try to avoid I try to avoid causing other people discomfort or pain, if the option is on the table where I can experience it so that you don't have to. Not a great way of living. I'm just saying.
So yeah, I think there's something positive in that.
It is people pleasing, like you said, though.
Yeah, but I also think that you may not realize it in your attempt to keep the peace and to keep everyone happy, and you you are you often could be planting seeds that are in time potentially negatively affecting your relationship.
Oh, 100%.
Um,
And I'm not even affording them the opportunity to be honest and vulnerable with me by
yeah,
bringing up, hey, because they might have not intended for it to go that way. Their intentions could have been totally different, and maybe I misunderstood, and I'm not affording them the chance to be like, oh no, I didn't mean it like that, or oh no, I actually did this because I thought your main goal was this, and I was just trying to get to that quicker. I had no intention of making you feel that way, or when I said that, I actually meant this. I'm like withholding their chance at being a good friend or explaining themselves, which
yeah,
is, I shouldn't do that.
or just becoming aware, like, hey, I didn't even know that like that's something easy for me to change.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that would, if I just known that, I would have completely done something differently. Um, yeah, and I think as you work on that, that's kind of how you should reframe it. Like, because your tendency is, how can I go out of my way for this person? I think the next step of that is, this is the way for me to go out of my way, because it's so uncomfortable for me to vocalize that, or I'm afraid of making somebody else feel uncomfortable. But that's the thing that is, in the long run or even in the short run, that's the thing that I should be doing, because whatever consequence it is, right? Maybe they will be upset, but if you say it in a way that is pure, and with the intention of growing the relationship, they should ideally, not always, but they should eventually come around to the point where it's like, hey, this is just an exercise for our relationship. This is just something that I should be aware of, and maybe I don't, maybe they don't even have to change. Maybe there's a point in the middle, or a point of, hey, this isn't something I'm willing to change, and then then you have that information, or hey, we can meet in the middle, or I can completely change that.
Yeah.
And I think that's, yeah, I think that,
When I do it, when I do afford someone that opportunity, 90% of the time it goes well. It's just my inner fears of like, well, but if I say that, what if, it's always like a fear of not, two things, a fear of not getting what I want, or a fear of losing what I have. So it's like, well, I don't really like the way she does this when we're having sex. But if I say that, maybe she won't ever have sex with me again. Or, you know what I mean? Or like, not that that's realistic, but and that's not a current problem I have. It's just like, maybe if I tell Steve that I don't like that, that he does this thing, maybe he just like won't want to hang out with me at all. Or maybe he'll punch me in the face. Maybe, I like the fear of the unknown.
yeah. So you know what that comes to mind then? So here's the problem, right? I have something that I want to express, and I'm concerned about how that's going to go. So, and there's multiple ways you can say it, right? If you can find the words that are free of negativity,
A judgment.
and maybe even, in a positive light, like if it is, hey, it would be awesome if you did it this way, as opposed to, oh, I don't really like what you're doing here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like in the expression itself, you can minimize the chances of that, or make the person feel, allow them to feel open and vulnerable enough to hear that feedback, and that's the relationship process, right? Like, hey, you know me, I'm not trying to hurt you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think this might be really good for maybe me, or for both of us, and whatever it may be, like the way you put the dishes in the thing, I think, that's one of my stupid things. I'm like, if we put all the forks in this one and all the spoons, like, how easy it is, and she's like, what the hell's the matter with
Just
you?
get them in there, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because she's like, must be a master at Tetris, because she can fit so much more crap in the dishwasher than I can, because I don't know, it's just, I'm just a guy. I don't know how that stuff works. And it's like, but it's an example that works. So we got sidetracked. When you asked me who I was supposed to then ask you who you were. But it's just naturally, this is where we ended up.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's been. I don't know.
Yeah, we're at the 45-minute mark, and I think that's good. I think that's that's a natural thing. But I'll try. Let me try to say who I am. So my name's Steve Moy. I'm here on Jackie's podcast. Grew up, born and raised in Waltham with Jackie himself. Done numerous different creative ventures, different career paths. From one of my first pursuits was making an album, making music. I've made several apps. I wrote a book. I, in general, love the creative process. I love people, and discovering who we are in this shared experience. I'm passionate about learning and growing, and yeah, and recently I've just reconnected with Jackie, because we are both kind of in the same world now, where we are looking to create, have creative outlets, and especially when it comes to audio and video. And I saw some of his work online. I reached out to him, and I think it's a really great opportunity and time for us to cross paths again. I think the course of our lives, we've been kind of going like this, and at different times, reconnecting and catching up, and getting an understanding of, what's happened in the last 2 to 4 to 8 years, whatever it may be. And it's always been a positive experience. So I figured, I'd do it again. And here we are just a week after. So yeah, and I'm excited about everything that we've already done so far in these last 48 minutes, and
It's been huge.
Yeah.
But I do need to ask you, because it's because I don't know about it, and because I think the content is valuable. What? Okay, it's going to be a multi-layered question. What possessed you to go on a show like that? What made you think that it could possibly work? And what's it like going through that process? Because I've been married. I'm divorced, but I've been married. But like, all that stuff happened behind closed doors. I wasn't, only person I was accountable to was my family and my wife at the time. I wasn't, nobody had any input on what type of person I was, the person I was dating. It was just like us. And you had a very different, I would imagine you had a very different experience. I didn't get to watch it, but Married at First Sight, I believe season 14, you took part in that. And so I want to know about that. I want to know exactly what I just asked you. 3-part question. Why would you do that? What made you think it would work? And what was it like?
Okay.
As honest as you can be.
Yeah. Let's take them one at a time. So the first one, what?
Why would you do that?
Okay. So I'll try to describe the scenario. Right. I was on a road trip. I just driven down the East Coast. I've already done a bunch of exploring on the West Coast at that point in time. So I was traveling down the East Coast. It was during COVID. Things were a little locked down. About a year after COVID had started, the layoffs happened at my company, and I decided to just make the best of that time, do some traveling. I was actually going to go all the way across the country, maybe even run into you at that point because you were out here. But I made it to, I want to say, Louisiana, somewhere between Florida Panhandle and Louisiana, and I got an Instagram DM, and I had never heard of the show, so I was just like assuming it was just a completely fake thing, like hey, if you invest $20, we're going to make you rich. Yeah. I'm like, hey, just sort of let me know if you're at all interested. I'm like, is this real? And they're like, yeah, here's some more information. Look into it. If you want to have a chat, let's do it. So I looked in, and they were talking about season 14, and I'm like, okay, so I guess not only is it real, it's like it's a thing that's
it's happened 13 other times.
Yeah, and it's out there. I can go to lifetime.com and see it, as opposed to just like this random person who wants something from me on the internet. Yeah. So I gave it some thought, and I want to say 38, 39, maybe 38 at the time. And I have been in numerous long-term relationships, so I have pretty good relationship experience. I did a little research about the show, what it consisted of, what would happen, like meeting somebody as at the ceremony, and 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, saying, getting married.
And you had never been married at this point?
Never been married. I'm also at a point in my life where, hey, if I do meet somebody, I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about. I think when you're younger, it might not be a good move to marry a stranger when you're not ready. Yeah. I'm ready to marry. I just don't know if the other person is or who they are, and whatever. It was a matter of finding that out. And you got to remember, I'm on a road trip. I'm in an open state in life. Like, I'm saying yes to things. Like I'm experiencing things. I'm just So then it started to go like, what's the worst that could happen? And it was like, okay, the worst that could happen is either she's not attracted to me, I'm not attracted to her, we just can't get along. Who knows? And I've had enough relationships that didn't work out that if it didn't, I could be okay with that.
Yeah, and typically you were still friends with all the girls you dated. It wasn't like you weren't the type of guy that like broke up and were like, never talk to me again. You always seemed to stay friends with people. You never had like these horrible, awful ending relationships, in my opinion. In
my serious relationships, I could reach out to a majority of them and just check in, and see some of them watched and were cheering me on. So I was like, okay. Now the other aspect was, you don't know if you say yes to this, you don't even know if you're going to get picked. So it wasn't like you're making a decision in that moment.
Yeah, they just want to know if you're open to it.
Yeah, are you open to it? Well, if you are at least open to it, jump on a Zoom call and meet the experts. It's like, all right, what's the worst that can happen? Let me do that. So I did that, and I was in Florida. I did a meeting. So I did a meeting in Florida. Yeah, that's right. I did the meeting in Florida, and then it went well. I was like, okay, well, that was kind of short, but who knows? I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going through this process. And then it eventually was like, well, if you do want to do this, you need to be in Boston because we're going to have in-person meetings. And I was like, you know what? Like, whatever. Like, I can go on a road trip again if I want to. I'll stick around here and I'll head back home. So that was kind of my thought process about, is this something you're open to? Is this, so to me, it was like, there is a there's a 50% chance roughly in the U.S. that your marriage isn't going to work without a TV show.
56% divorce rate.
Yeah. I looked at the numbers of the show at the time, and it was probably like 30 something. So it was like, all right, it's not that far off, and it's at least some potential. It's not just like a sideshow.
Yeah.
It's like it's people. Some people take this seriously. Some
not Jerry
do not.
Springer.
Yeah, some do not take it seriously at all. And I just had to mentally prepare for that as well. What if it's a train wreck? And so yeah, I guess I feel like that maybe answers the what made you think about doing this.
Well, right? Yeah, like why would you do that? Yes, because you were saying yes to things, and what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
And you were ready to marry.
Yep.
And at that point in your life, your picker hadn't found you a wife, so maybe these experts have a better picker.
Maybe the experts could find someone, and maybe I feel like I'm ready to be honest about my experience as it's happening. Yeah. Like I know the cameras are out and you're trying to make this relationship work. I know what it takes to make a relationship work. And I have a pretty good idea that I can express myself when problems come up. So I'm like, all right, I think I can handle this, this scenario, this situation, this experiment.
Okay.
Okay, and what was the part two of that?
So it was, why would you do that? The second one was, what made you think it would work? Like what gave you the impression that it could be successful?
Before the show or during the show?
Before.
Okay. Before, yeah, it was just a number of variables. The first was, okay, do a couple searches online. What's the track record? How many people are actually successful? And then the people that aren't successful, what's going on there? What if I get somebody who whatever? Okay, so now it's just a matter of not purely random. There is a matchmaking process, so maybe there to some degree. And I kind of did a numbers game. I'm like, you know what? It seems like in the past episodes there are two couples that are just not going to work no matter what. There's one or two that have a chance, and then there's one in the middle could go either way. So I just framed it as that, and I'm like, okay, if I meet somebody that we get along well, just do what you do, do what you can to make a relationship work. Like this is a commitment you're making. Take it seriously,
Yeah.
Do all you can and get to the bottom of it. If it goes the other way, if she's not attracted to me instantly, if I'm not attracted to her, all right, well, how do we handle that? Is it, is there other things besides attraction that we can connect on and grow on? Just go through all the different variables of what could happen, the potentials, and be prepared for whatever may come.
Okay. So now the last question is, what was it like? So I know that relationships are difficult without cameras, without other couples around. Like just having a relationship with someone privately is hard enough. When you add other couples being around now, and this is just my mind, but so now other couples are around. I'm now comparing what we're doing to what they're doing. Are they being more affectionate? Are they like being more honest with each other than I am with my girl? Like, oh, he's touching her leg. Should I be touching my girlfriend's leg? And okay, so that's just having other couples around. Now add cameras. Now in my mind, how is this coming off? Am I sitting close enough to her? Like, my hair okay? Like, all of these added, for me, insecurities and variables. It just feels like to me I wouldn't be able to like wholeheartedly just focus on my relationship with this woman because I'm seeing them and I'm hearing about them, and now the girl that I'm seeing is going and talking with them. Is she saying positive things about me? She comes back and says something. Oh, yeah, I was talking to her and her husband's doing this and it's horrible. And I just feel like relationships are hard enough between two people. When you just add in more things, it just feels to me like a recipe for disaster, dude. That's just my opinion, though.
And to some people, it was, and at times it was. I think the best way we'll start at is trying to describe it. The physical experience. We'll start there, and then we'll dive in further. So similar to this, right? Aside from the fact that there's a camera set up, there's two cameras, and there's two people holding the cameras. There's some producers. There's somebody in the next room. There's runners who are facilitating equipment and all that. So there's a team, and depending on the scenario, if we're just around the apartment like this, there's a team of roughly 7 people. But mainly your producer and camera people. That's kind of what the room consists of. And then you and your partner, me and my partner. Um, in general, that number varies. If we're all together, then it just, we might fill out a whole hall. Now, the first time being on camera, when I went back to Boston and went on site at a hotel and met the experts, lights, camera, action, doing all these things. Okay, like it was overwhelming. That was like, okay, I barely slept that night. I think you just get so turned up, like, oh man, that was quite an experience. And I think each time that happened, you kind of it becomes slowly normalized. Like it's such a unique experience and it happens often enough that eventually you're like, well, what else are you going to do? You're going to get used to it eventually.
Yeah.
Takes time, and for everyone it's different. I won't say that I ever became just, oh yeah, I don't even notice. I think you're always aware, but after a while, if it's happening enough and you're having a genuine, you have a problem to resolve, or you have something that you're trying to do in that moment, whether it's a date or a conversation, or you kind of just focus on that. So hey, we're having this issue. Let's hash it out. Like, how do you feel about this? And I mean, I think you might be even getting there now, where we've been doing this for an hour, and I feel pretty comfortable with you. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
not that I've forgotten that that's there, but we're in it, and now it's just like, okay,
yeah,
we're just in it.
You've accepted it, and it's just like, okay, well, how would I handle this? This is the answer to your question. This is how I would express myself in this, for this type of relationship problem. So that it becomes more common, and so that's kind of the experience. The other side of it is, okay, hey, I have something that I need to share with her, or another couple, or whatever it may be, and there's also a bunch of people around. Never mind the cameras, and you kind of get detached from the fact that X amount of people, I think it was roughly 500,000 to 1 million people, watch it in real time. But it's just like, well, these people are here, and let me try to be open about this problem that we're having. And you get better at it. You just like, okay, well, like, and one thing that was important to me is like, do your best not to try to hide stuff.
Yeah.
Because when people, I think people are smarter than people give people credit for. Not everyone, but you can always tell, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think like the camera doesn't lie. Like, you can tell somebody's intentions. You can tell the way that they're saying it, the way that they're doing it, what's going on. You're always conveying some type of information. And for me, it was like, you know what? Like, don't, like,
what do you have to hide? Dude?
Yeah. Like, yeah, we have this problem and I would like it to be solved. So let me try to get to the bottom of it and express it properly and be considerate and all those things. So that's kind of what it was like. And it was a lot, though. It was 4 to 5 days a week. It was for several months, and and you're not always like, one day you're just chipper and you're ready to go and you can do this, and another day you're exhausted and you're just like, oh man, I got to get through this. There was a lot of emotional management, just like anything. So yeah, that's kind of and what was the exact question again? What was it like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what it was like.
Was it? But you don't. So I don't watch the show, so I'm naive to that. But like, so it's not. You're not like sitting down with this woman, talking about your morals and values and how what conflict resolution looks like to you and all those things until after you've already said yes, I'll marry you. None of that happens until after you're already married?
I didn't even, I met her at the altar and then we proceeded to have problems.
Well, of course you did.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, that's got like, for instance, if they started filming you in your relationship right now, you're going to have problems eventually, right? Like,
well, yeah, but I already have 2 years of experience dating her, so I'm like,
yeah, you have a foundation, and I think that's the biggest difference. You're building the foundation of a relationship in real time, and that's very hard to, especially when you don't know it could be somebody who you can't build a foundation with. That's the
Yeah,
unknown.
not everybody's compatible.
Yeah.
So initially, so this kicks off with you're married.
Yep.
Okay. That's so strange, but okay. Did you think initially that it could work? Just based on, oh wow,
at first meeting, you're saying?
Yeah.
We're not before anymore. Now we're talking about.
There's been no problems that you just see this woman and you think, oh wow, she's beautiful. I'm lucky. I could, yeah, sure, I could marry this girl. Do you think that, like, what does that look like?
So yes, the first interaction, some of the early days, there was a lot of positive signs. I think we hit the ground running in like we. I feel like at the beginning, if you were doing betting odds or something like that, I feel like we had the best shot because we did have an initial spark, an initial understanding, what felt like the potential of a relationship working.
Okay, and so what? Then what? Like then what? You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're gonna make some sausages. We killed the cow. Now what? You know what I mean? Like, so that part's done. We killed the cow. So, okay, you said I do. Now
are we making hamburgers or sausages?
Whatever, dude. We're going to get our hands dirty either way. Okay. And so, like, what does it look like? What are, how hard is it to, I was going to say, how hard is it to tell your wife how you feel? But because in my brain, your wife already knows what bothers you and stuff because before you decided to marry her.
In most cases, yes.
So what does that look like? What does it feel like? Like, how do you? So you're supposed to have sex on your wedding night, right?
So we didn't consummate on our wedding night.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, but that's a question, like, because typically that's what you do. You know what I mean? But it's like, nice to meet you. Yep. Let's get naked. I don't know how that works.
So okay, yeah. So
and you don't have to explain.
Two things are happening at once. Yes, you are getting married. Your family and friends are around. Some of her family and friends are around. That whole experience happened. So at the same time that you're married, you're also starting a relationship, and that's the reality of it. Yeah. Like anyone can be married at any day at any time. It doesn't mean that you're.
It's just a legal contract.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that your husband and wife who have been in it for 3 years and you understand. Like you're starting from day one.
Yeah.
So it's also like a first date. It's a first date with a heavy commitment. So there's a lot that, just as any first date goes, it's just this one's being captured and you're kind of trying to, get to
playing catch up, dude.
Yeah. Like how can we get to this point where we kind of should be at this point, but given the circumstances, you understand you're not there. How can we get there? And it starts as a first date. It starts to do as you just get to know somebody, and then things come up, and then you see how you handle it. You see how they handle it. You start adjusting your the other question, which is, can this work? Like, do you okay, are we going to be able to get through this? Oh, you know what? We found a way to through this. Okay, you get the momentum back, So each problem you run into, you start to question things and then
reevaluate.
Yeah, you reevaluate, you find out, okay, can we get through this? Are we? And I think this goes for every romantic relationship you find yourself in. You come up against a hard wall and then you see if the two of you can get past it. And if you don't, then you recognize it's time to break up. But in this one, the difference is that you got to try a little harder. You know what I mean? Like
the stakes are higher.
Yeah. Like, hey, look it. Like so. Fast forward. We can backtrack a little bit, but fast forward. Hey, this isn't working. It eventually got to that point. Clearly, like we're no longer married.
Yeah, you're not wearing a ring, so I assumed.
Right. So
the door's open for me to sneak in.
So fast forward. Hey, this isn't working, and it's really not working. We need to see a counselor. We need to really do what it takes to try to make a relationship work. So
what do you mean by this isn't working? Like neither one of you are happy. You guys are yelling at each other. Like you don't want to be around each other. What does that look like?
There were a lot of things that happened in this case, and I'm glad that to a degree that you're far removed from it, because now you're just taking the human aspect of it, whereas somebody who
I've never seen any of it.
Yeah. So
nor do I have any. I love you, right, and I would love to see you on television. I just don't watch that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't watch golf. I respect golf, but I don't watch it.
Yeah. So there were a number of things that went wrong in that relationship, just like any relationship. But in this one, the problems started off getting fixed and resolved and coming together and growing together stronger, and that eventually stopped happening.
Okay.
To different degrees. Sometimes we would get past it, sometimes we would limp past it. I think we just had major expectations, different expectations. I think on both sides, we were looking at each other, and it was like, that's not what I expect my married partner to this isn't what I would expect them to how they would handle it. And I think she was looking at me the same way. This is what you know, and I will say, you go into this with a certain level of, okay, I have to drop expectations, but for me, it was like, these are expectations.
There's expectations, and then there's non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right. So and that's the thing. It wasn't like I expected her to be this XYZ. It was like, in order to make a relationship work for me, this is how we need to be able to handle our conflicts. This is what we need to be willing to compromise on.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that working. I think there were some things that she was so rigid on, and I'm sure she felt the same way as me, that it was like, okay, that's this is working for now, but it's not going to work if we're thinking long term.
Yeah.
We're looking ahead and starting a family and doing all these things. This is, like that part doesn't work. And maybe we can pause real quickly. And I mean, if you're open to it, I don't know how open you are to expressing what didn't work in your relationship.
Of course.
Yeah. So.
But if we can pause, I have to pee so bad.
Yeah. Let's take a little break.
So bad.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just. I'll hit stop on stuff and check everything.
Yeah. Stop mine. It's gonna fucking.
Yeah. Good job holding it, Jackie.
Dude.
Remember that people pleasing thing we were talking about?
God, that's just innate in me, dude. I can't fix it.
Yeah. No, I'm just messing around.
No, I thought that was great. You could turn the AC back on. Did